Have you ever wanted to know how sexually attractive women think you are?
Nope. Instead, we're talking about Immanuel Kant's Categorical Imperative from the Groundwork for the Metaphysics of Morals. You cannot talk about Kant's moral philosophy without mentioning the Categorical Imperative, even though I kinda just did that in my first Kant video. But let's finally look into what the Categorical Imperative is, its different formulations, and the debate surrounding it. In our last video, we came across our first formulation of this Categorical Imperative, and this is it right here. I should never act except in such a way that I could also will that my maxim should become a universal law. This is also called the universality formulation of the categorical imperative, which implies that there are other formulations of this thing. But let's examine these two words and see what they mean for Kant: categorical and imperative. Kant starts with the word imperative. Up to this point, Kant has been emphasizing the importance of duty in his moral philosophy. It's important we do a good thing not because of some ulterior motive, but simply out of respect for a rule. And we've also seen the importance of universality with Kant, desiring that these rules should be applicable throughout space and time. So he's already set us up to expect something necessary and required. And this plays into how he defines the word imperative. Imperatives are only formulas for expressing the relation of objective laws of willing in general to the subjective imperfection of the will of this or that rational being, e.g. the human will. So these imperatives are these formulas of command, these ought statements, that communicate to us in our human will. They tell us objective rules or principles through these you ought to statements. But we as humans ultimately have the power to reject or accept those imperatives. For example, if I came up to you and said, you ought not to lie, I would be giving you an imperative to not lie, because to Kant it is the objective rule. But again, the imperative can't force you to do anything even though it says that you must do something. That's where we get into categorical imperatives versus hypothetical imperatives. A hypothetical imperative says that something is good because of something else. For example, don't lie because you don't want to be called a liar. That's a hypothetical imperative. The goodness of an act is dependent upon something else other than the act. Now contrast this with the categorical imperative, which would say that you shouldn't lie simply because lying is wrong. A categorical imperative, which declares an action to be of itself objectively necessary without reference to any purpose, i.e. without any other end, holds as an apodictic practical principle. Also, no shame in not knowing what apodictic means because I didn't either. It just means necessarily true, which does fit for what Kant is after. So categorical means something is objectively and necessarily right, and imperatives are formulas for determining an action. Put those two together, and a categorical imperative is going to say that we need to do something not because of the effects of that action, but because the action in itself is objectively and necessarily good. Finally, there is one imperative which immediately commands a certain conduct without having as its condition any other purpose to be attained by it. This imperative is categorical. It is not concerned with the matter of the action and its intended result, but rather with the form of the action and the principle from which it follows. Now it's time to get really confusing, so take my hand as we venture into the gray world of whether there is one or many categorical imperatives. Kant seems to make it easy for us by essentially repeating the universality imperative as the one true imperative. Hence there is only one categorical imperative, and it is this: act only according to that maxim whereby you can at the same time will that it should become a universal law. Simple enough, right? Wrong. Later on, Kant goes on to say this: the practical imperative will therefore be the following: act in such a way that you treat humanity, whether in your own person or in the person of another, always at the same time as an end and never simply as a means. Okay, wait. This imperative is talking about treating others as ends and not simply as means. Is this a different categorical imperative? But Kant just told us that there is only one categorical imperative. So which is it? Apparently this has been a question that has riddled many philosophers, but not to worry because I have the objectively correct answer. Okay, probably not, but this is what I got. Kant says that there's only one categorical imperative, so let's take him for his word. But why is there a universality formula and now a means formula? Well, as the translator for my copy, James W. Ellington, writes, they are different formulations of one categorical imperative that imply each other. That's the easiest way to think about it for me, that they imply each other. If you acted only in a way that you'd want everyone else to be treated similarly, i.e. the universality formula, then it's implied that you're treating other people, heck, the entirety of humanity, as ends. So the universality formula implies the mean formula. But does the mean formula imply the universality formula? Well, if you're treating all of humanity as an end, then you're considering your actions and how they would be applied not just to the people involved, but the entirety of humanity. Thus, the means formula would in turn imply the universality formula. This is a lot, so let's continue to use the example of lying. Let's say you're considering lying to your friend that you'll pay him back if he gives you a copy of a comic you want. The universality formula would say that we should not lie because we would not like lying to become a universal law. This considers all the other humans in the world as an end. The means formula would say that we shouldn't lie because we shouldn't use our friends simply as a means to get a comic. But to not treat humans as a means would mean to consider them and their autonomy universally, thus implying the universality formula. It's confusing, and Kant himself is not much help, but bottom line is that there is one categorical imperative, but different formulations of it, with each saying things differently but implying the same thing. Now the hardest part about this for me to accept is that I was on board with the universality formula. I mean, totally. Let's consider our actions becoming universally applied. However, I wasn't entirely on board with the means formula, because we all treat each other as means in some way. Right now you're treating me as a means by watching this video, and the parts used to make the device you're watching this on, those parts were put together by others, who you're also treating as means. We treat people as means at work, when shopping, dining. I mean, it seems inescapable. That is, until I found the magic word in one of the means formulations. The one we already covered uses the word simply, but check this one out. Now I say that man, and in general every rational being, exists as an end in himself and not merely as a means to be arbitrarily used by this or that will. Did you catch that magic word? Merely. Look, it's impossible to not rely on the help of other people, and essentially use them as means, unless you're 100% self-sufficient and live off the land or something. But just because we're helping one another, doesn't mean that they're merely means or should be viewed as such. I think if we respect each other's autonomy and consider everyone universally when acting, i.e. the universality formulation, then we can treat people as both means and ends, not simply as means. Maybe I'm reading Kant wrong, but that's the best I could come up with to square away the means formulation and to make it work with the universality formulation, to essentially be one categorical imperative. Wow, so this was a heck of a series, huh? We covered the importance of universality, a goodwill, duty, and now we covered two formulations of the infamous categorical imperative. Pat yourself on the back, cause this stuff is hard. I'm gonna stitch together all of this into one video next week, so no new content, but I am working on a heavily requested video in the background. So just know I'm not slacking off. Also, I'm starting this new series on my Instagram where I recreate album covers from albums I like in my own cartoon style. So if that's something you're interested in, then go check that out. Feel free to leave a comment below, and if you enjoyed this video, then be sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell button for more. And with that, I wish you all a beautiful rest of your day.